Gladiator 2 has been a Hollywood rumor for decades, so to say it's finally out playing in theaters everywhere feels pretty futuristic if I'm being honest. As a point of reference, the original Gladiator is outstanding in my opinion, and the trailers for this film had me begging for it to release sooner because they just looked phenomenal. But I was more than prepared for this to be a disappointment because matching its great predecessor was always going to be a tough challenge. And then I forgot who I was doubting. I was doubting Ridley Scott, who granted hasn't had the best career in recent years, Napoleon, but I left that theater stunned. Gladiator 2 is everything I wanted it to be and a bit more. Paul Mescal and Denzel Washington give us some of the best performances of the year. Everyone else is phenomenal as well, but those two really stuck with me. Mescal is a brilliant leading man, and he had the tough task to fill Russell Crowe's shoes. That was always going to be something near impossible, but for me personally, he does it wonderfully. He is a powerhouse in this movie, and the direction they decided to take Lucius's character, I found to be perfect. It brilliantly ties back to Marcus Aurelius's wishes from the first film, and of course it ties back to Maximus's goals as well. Denzel Washington, plays this charismatic but also power-hungry arms dealer and former gladiator. And I absolutely loved what they did with his character by the end of the film. What I think the film does especially well is that it deepens the lore of this fictional Rome. It expands on Rome's corruption and it expands on the legacy left behind by Maximus. There are tons and tons and tons of callbacks to the original film, and they're handled brilliantly. And how the events of the original Gladiator shaped the next 2 decades of this fictional version of Rome. The action here is phenomenal because let's be honest, let's just be real for a couple seconds. When you have sharks and ancient, extinct monkeys and rhinos fighting in an arena with Paul Mescal there, it's going to be awesome. But even beyond that, the cinematography is breathtaking, and just how every single one of these fight scenes are shot, it looks beautiful. This is a beautifully looking film, and it's refreshing to see a $250 million movie actually look like a $250 million movie. Every ounce of the budget is on screen, and it feels massive. So that falls in line with what I think is the best thing that Ridley Scott does with his films, crafting these huge sweeping epics with just a large scope and size. While I absolutely adored this film, I loved this movie, which seems to be a pretty unpopular opinion right now, but whatever, I still have some small issues that I want to touch on. I think Pedro Pascal's character was sort of wasted. Not to say that he was bad or anything in the role, but it felt kind of anticlimactic where they take the character by the end of the movie, and the rivalry between Lucius and the general could have been so much more than it ended up being, in my opinion. Also, there's a decision that Lucius makes during the third act of this movie featuring Pedro Pascal's character that felt a bit out of place to me. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. Gladiator 2 was everything to me. A worthy sequel to one of the most iconic films of the century, arguably. The original Gladiator just has shaped so many films since its original release in 2000. The payoff for this film was excellent. I love the way they took this character Lucius, and it's so good, man. Without spoiling anything, it's just a phenomenal ending. The last 15 minutes of this movie are some of my is one of my favorite scenes of the entire year. So this movie just confirmed that even at 87 years old, Ridley Scott is still one of the best working filmmakers in Hollywood. I absolutely love this movie. Gladiator 2 is phenomenal.